Hello again, you wonderful Godot people. In this video, we're going to start making our basic level shape. We're not going to fill it with obstacles yet. We're just going to give ourselves a place to run around in. And we have a choice to make because there's two ways that Godot provides that we could use to make a 3D level. So we're going to answer the question, should we use a grid map? And in order to do that, I'm going to show you what a grid map is and how it works and why it's not right for our game. So first, let's jump into Godot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to our models. I'm going to go to our architecture, and in here we have a bunch of interesting meshes. So if I bring in, for example, this doorway mesh. In fact, you know what? Let's make a brand new scene so I can show you this properly. Brand new scene, 3D scene. There we go. So I'm going to bring in, let's say, not a doorway. That's a door, not a doorway. Let's bring in a wall. Here is a lovely wall, and just to make it nice and obvious, I'm going to click on the wall. I'm going to transform and put it at 0, 0, 0. Great. You'll notice the origin is in the corner. That's where the physics can be handled. But that's okay. We're going to turn this into a static object, so it doesn't need to worry about where the origin is for physics. Now, this will become important in a bit, but for the physics side, we don't care. I'm going to mesh, and I'm going to go create convex static body. Now, on later versions of Godot, you might not have convex. You may have to use tri-mesh. That's fine. You can use that. Okay, so we have a single wall, and it's a static body. And I'm going to just call this level test, or grid map test, which I'm going to spell badly and put a space in for no reason. Grid map test. Haha. Okay, let's bring in a wall doorway. And I'm going to do a similar thing. So let's transform you to 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to put snapping on and just move you out the way so I can see what I'm doing. And I'll create a static mesh. Create... in this case, I'm going to make a convex static body because I need to be able to go through the hole there. Okay, so we have two objects. Now, you'll remember that we've used a lot of tile maps in the past. Tile maps is a 2D system where we split the level into grids and we say at this grid, use this tile, at this grid, use this tile. Grid map is the same thing, but in 3D. The first thing we need is something called a mesh library. Think of this as an array, but instead of having traditional values in it, each entry in the array is a mesh. I'm going to scene, convert to mesh library. And for now, I'm going to leave it on this top level because I'm not going to be keeping it anyway. I'm going to call this test.meshlib. And it's converted. Now I can go back to my level template and I can add a brand new node. And this is one we haven't seen before. It's a grid map. And under mesh library, I can now load in test meshlib. And you can see we have two objects here. So if I pick one, I can start moving it around. Now, it looks like we're hovering just above the ground right now, are we? No, we're on the ground. I could use Q and E to raise and lower the grid if I needed to, because we can now work in 3Ds. Use S to rotate on this axis, and A to rotate on this. There's more buttons. You can find them over here. Lots and lots you can do with this. Working with 3D complicates things dramatically. You'll also notice, by the way, everything here is too big. But for now, let's just make a very simple grid. And we can see if I go this way, it's not so bad. Going this way is a little trickier, but look at that. We have quite a lovely little, come on, you can do it, wall. So if I jump in game, so far, so good, right? I turn around, here's a giant wall that is much too big. It has collision. It is floating. I can't walk through there because my collision is off. But we have a basic wall. Let's fix that height a little bit, shall we? Why are you floating? You should not be floating. I'm going to take the entire grid map. I'm actually just going to move this node down, which is a little bit cheeky, but I'm going to do it. I move you down by 0.5, 0.75. Yeah, that works. Okay, let's see if I can now run through you. No, but I can fix the collision in a bit. Okay, so leaving aside that collision problem, oops, thank you. I'm going to come out of the grid map so I can use my mouse properly. Okay, so this works great, but let's say I want to make this corner here. Let's just go into full screen mode. You'll notice immediately we start having problems. First, putting a corner there deletes part of the node. Secondly, they don't line up here. Now I can rotate it and it starts going at the cross section. There's two problems we're dealing with here, right? So that's going to look okay. That is not. Here are the two problems we're dealing with. First, and I'll go into this scene to see it, the origin is in the center. So every time we place a tile, we're placing it here. Now we could move the origin. We could even use plugins in Blender to recalculate where the origin should be. Now everything Kenny makes has the origin in the center, which works great for Unity. Doesn't work too well for us. We could if we wanted to. We don't have too many assets and we have a bunch of furniture. It's an option we have open to us. But there's another problem. You see, these tiles are not cubic. They're cuboid. They're not squares, they're rectangles, but in 3D. So if I take this doorway and duplicate it, and let's say I rotate it by 90 degrees, those are both occupying the same 3D grid, right? So if I place one, I'll remove the other. In order to make this work, I would have to have each grid be the depth of the door, because that's my shortest point, which means that my grid is going to be really, really fiddly. So let's recap a little bit. Our options for 3D architecture include Gridmap nodes, and in certain circumstances, these are great. However, for this to really work, we should be using cubic assets, or something close to cubic. Now, this assumes that you've got the origin in the center, which makes it much easier to calculate which way the thing is going, and that the objects are cubic, or at least have a square floor plan. They don't have to have one, but it does make things a lot easier. Or we can place things manually. We can turn every single asset we want to use into its own static scene and just instance them in. In our case, the latter is actually much simpler. So, grid maps are awesome, and I've used them in other projects, and I love them, but they're not right here. The takeaway is the right tool for the right job. Okay, so I'm going to save this scene and then delete the grid map. Then I'm going to go back to my root res scene. I'm going to find my test mesh lib. I'm going to delete it. That's to say, oh no, you're using it in the scene. I'm not. You'll be fine. Great. And just to check everything's working. Before I start making things, by the way, the character model is made by Quaternius. The desk and the architecture is made by Kenny, and we have a different scale, right? The desk is the wrong size. Just to check what kind of size it should be, I'm going to take the desk. I'm not going to touch the collision right now. I'm just going to take the mesh object. I don't really want to be scaling collisions. And let's change the scale to 0.5 and see how that looks. The collision will be way off. It's going to look weird. Okay, that's too small. So let's try, what do you think, 0.75? Oops. 0.75. There's a bug in my version of Godot right now where the z-axis isn't actually updating the value, but it is updating the size. Let's see how 0.75 looks. Still a bit high, maybe 0.6. Let's find out. 0.6. And take a look. 0.6 is perfect for this asset. Now, the collision is here, so do be aware. Don't actually do what I've just done in the live game. But for now, I'm actually going to remove this desk. We now have a template scene. I'm going to save that. And we have this little organization node here called furniture, just a basic spatial node. I'm going to take my new node. I'm going to move it up to here, and I'm going to call this one walls. You can call it architecture if you like. I want to call it walls. Under models, under architecture, I'm going to start making a single version of each of these and then saving them as their own scene. So just to start us off, let's start with a wall. That feels like a good place to start. In fact, you know what? I'm going to start with a doorway, because if I start with a wall doorway, I can see if it's the right size. Currently, it is not. I'm going to turn snap to grid on. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to start with my doorway. I'm going to change the scale. So let's say 0.6, right? How's that look? Actually looks pretty good. Let's see how that looks in game. I mean, it's a bit high, but not bad. Let's take a look at a window. That's going to be another great way of seeing if we're right. And let's just move you down. So take this window. It's not a child of the doorway. Go transform. 0.25 should get it just above the floor. And it's already inherited that 0.6 scene because I accidentally put it as a child doorway. So let's take a look. And the window is, I mean, it's a little high, but that's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, I think 0.6 will do it. Okay, so let's start with one object so we don't confuse ourselves. We have this doorway, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a static mesh. So tri-mesh static body. I'll press play, make sure I can actually go through the hole in the wall. Haha, can't go through the wall, can go through the hole, or the doorway, if you will. And that's going to be our first scene. Let's rename this to doorway. And let's make a brand new folder. I'm going to call this architecture. Architecture, there we go. And it's going to be called doorway, and it's in there. It's now instance. Okay, so I'm going to do this for all these others. And I might speed this up as I go, or even just do a fancy fade. Okay, so I've made 5 of these assets. I've got 1 more to make, so I'm just going to walk us through what I did. I actually cheated a little bit. I went back to my doorway and brought this in as a child, which applied the scale, and then I moved the wall back to walls, so now it just has that scale. Let's go to transform, make sure it's the same height as everything else, which is 0.25 on the y-axis. I'm just going to move it to the side over here, just so we can have everything lined up. Go to mesh. This is a convex static body because we can hit the middle. On the doorways, we need to go through the middle, so they can't be convex. So let's make that a branch as seen. Save that. Great, we now have some basic assets. We have some fun wood paneling in case we want that on the side of the wall. We've got wall, we've got 2 styles of doorway, and we've got 2 sides of window. So here's our basics. Okay, so with that done, let's get rid of all of these because this is our template level. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go scene, new inherited scene. I'm going to inherit from level 1 template. I'm going to call our level 1 template level 1, not level 1 template. Save that as level 1, not level 1 template. And now we have this walls thing. We can start instancing things in. Let's instance in the doorway wide. And just check that you're in the right place. So you should be at 0.25. And let's talk about what we want with this level. So we have this huge floor space. It's probably a bit too big for play space. So I'm not going to use the whole thing. I'm going to have a play area in the center here. It's going to be nice and long like a tennis court. We're going to have our NPCs on one side, our player on the other. They won't be able to cross into the center. We'll have bystanders that will go back and forth over here. And they'll be attacked. Well, they'll be like ducks at a shooting gallery that you don't want to hit. They're going to be obstacles we don't want to hit. So what I want is an entrance for the bystanders and a section around for everyone else. So that's what this wall is for. So I'm going to move this to, where's a good place? -10, I think. -10 on the z-axis. And I've got it at 0.25 on the y, which is the right height. And I kind of want this central. Now, the origin's in the center. So if I put this at 0, that's not central, right? I mean, it is for the origin. It's not for the mesh. So let's try 0.5, maybe 1.5. Is 1.5 right? Yeah, I can live with that. Let's call it 1.5. Now, one more thing I do want to do, if I duplicate this wall, I can show you. I want to make sure that this is actually the right size. Now, if yours isn't, you can go to transform and configure snap and make sure that your snap here is right. So that looks good. Let's try bringing in a wall. It's going to instance in a wall. And I'm just going to make sure that it's all able to fit properly. Now, at the moment, because they spawned in a different place, the snap isn't working. So I'm going to take this doorway wide 2 I've got here, and let's say 1.5 on the X. So what are you at? You're at -2. So 1.5 on the X. Delete doorway 2. And now, when I select the wall, it should snap properly. Great. So now I can just keep going like this. So Control D, duplicate over here. And maybe another one. And 2 more. 1, 2. Great. Okay, so here's some walls. And let's make this nice and easy for myself. I'm going to select all of those, duplicate them, and look at that. We have the beginnings of a level. Okay, I might want to go a little bit deeper than that. In fact, I think I shall. So let's just duplicate you one more time. And make sure that you're actually in the right place. You are. And we'll do that over here. Duplicate, move you, la 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 la. Great. Now I think on these walls here, I'm going to have windows. So let's go right to the top. I'm going to instance in a window. And let's move you to the right place. So we said 1.5. And the Y should be 0.25. And I'm doing that so that they snap correctly. So I'm going to move you over here. And go to rotate, which is E. Rotate it by 90 degrees because I'm snapping. That's nice and easy. That's actually the back of the wall, isn't it? So let's keep rotating you. There we go. And move you to here. So I'm thinking, let's bring in the other window. Instance in, window slide, and what we'll do here. So select the right window. There it is. You should be 1.5. You should be 0.25. And you lived over here. Just check that I got that right. Yes, I did. Great. Move you over here, rotate you by 90 degrees. And how are you looking? Pretty awesome. Okay, duplicate you. Rotate by 90 degrees. And now I'm going to just duplicate this window once. This window once. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? Okay, so here's the fun bit. Just take all of these windows and this wall. So I've got select, so I just shift click on it, duplicate those, slide them over, and rotate. Now, you see how we rotated on the axis? It didn't fit. Origins aren't in the center. That's why grid maps aren't going to work here. One more thing to make my level complete. I'll take all of these walls, which I'm going to do just by clicking them all. Make sure I've got select on. That's all of them. Great. Duplicate you. Rotate by 180. And adjust for the origin. And when we press play, I'm going to feel very silly because I've done something very silly. We're playing the default level. We don't want to play the default level. Let's go to project settings. You can't tell, but I'm blushing a bit. Let's go to run and change what scene we're running. Let's click level 1. Make sure it says level 1. And now when I press play, nice and professional. There we go. We now have the beginnings of our level. And collision works. We can run through this door. We could make this a little wider if we wanted. We still have that option available to us, but that's looking great. Now, some problems. One, the camera goes through the wall. So what I'm going to end up doing is putting some stuff here that stops that happening. There's other things we could do. We could take this white material. I'll show you. In fact, we could take one of these and take a look at the materials in it. And click on it and go to the albedo and change the alpha to something like 50. You won't notice any difference, but if I go to flags and go to transparent, you'll now see it. I don't like this option because the sides of the wall are now very obvious. So if I come back here, right, you get this weird glass effect. I don't like that, but that is an option you could do. I am just going to make it so the character can't run further back than this, right? We're going to have something there. We're also going to have it so that the character can't run any further than here. And same can be true for the NPCs. They're not going to cross over. So our effective play space is here. Our target space is over there. Let's just fix this material to what it was before. And make sure that I haven't broken everything. And that is our basic level. So here's my challenge to you. I would like you to make a simple level using walls, doorways, and windows. If you want, you can use those wood panels too. They're kind of fun, but see what you can do. Rather than come back and see what you think, I'm going to end the video here because I've shown you my level, so you've got an idea of how I did it. You could make yours different shapes, different sizes. You could even not have rectangles if you wanted. You could have little nooks and corners. It's your game. You should do what you want. But excellent work, and I'll see you in the next video.